Right, you may have noticed that even though the title at the bottom is a Dvoretsky Endgame Manual still, I've changed the picture to the 100 Endgames You Must Know by Jesus de la Villa. So I'm calling that the Book of Jesus. Because I think it sort of finally deserves a mention. I mean, I sort of see it as an incredibly good building block to then move on to the Dvoretsky Endgame Manual. And this is ending 87 in the Book of Jesus, and it's covered extremely well. So he kicks off with what happens if white's got their pawns on the starting squares, the G and the H pawns, and the defending side has two. This is really easily one for white, whoever's move it is. As usual, black doesn't want to move their pawn off the starting square. Now, white's winning plan here is basically to get their king to h6 and then sort it out from there. And once the white king's landed on h6, it's actually pretty simple to sort it out, to be honest. But there's an extremely important position that needs to be understood if black just refuses to let you get to h6 with your king and says, well, I'm going to move this. I'm going to move this pawn, basically. So if black plays h6, something that's extremely important to understand is that we're trying to set up our pawns on g4 and h4 with the opposition. And that whole thing works one rank further back as well. As we'll see in it's called the Reti-Mandler study from 1921. It's sort of seen as sort of a pivotal position in Dvoretsky's endgame manual. But that's what we're trying to achieve now, is that once the defending side's pawns come forward, if we can get our pawns there with the kings facing off like this and we've got the opposition, it's a win. So the first move, I mean, we've got lots of reserve tempi to play with, so it doesn't really matter particularly. We can just play g4 on the first one. And then when black plays king g6, we've just got to make sure that when we play h4, we've got the opposition. So h4 here will be a blunder. And in fact, there's only one winning move here, which is h3, king f6, and then h4. So it's pretty important to know that that is a win with these pawns in that formation, and we've got the opposition. Let's just sort of see how it's won from there, because there's some interesting moves later on. So king e6, king e4, and we just outflank the black king. King f6, king d5. Let's see what black could try here. So let's say black tries king f7, sort of trying to get the opposition off you. We still just come into e5. Let's say king g7, king f5, king back to f7, and then h5. So black did have the opposition, but we play h5. And you can see we're going to outflank again and pick up this pawn. That's the plan, basically. Or back in this position, if black had played king e7, I think we've just transposed there, haven't we? It's the same thing. So yeah, king e5, king g7, king f5, and yeah, that's it. We had that one spare tempo, so it didn't matter that black got the opposition back off us. Let's go back to here, and let's say black tries king e7. I mean, once we're on the 5th rank, this is the one black's actually given us the opposition straight away. If they go that way, we're into g6, and that's sort of just trivially winning. By the way, at any given point, if black pushes the h pawn, we can just push the g pawn, and it's a protected pass pawn, and it's a win. Just be careful of that, though, as in that particular position. It is a win, but you might have to mess around triangulating to come back and not push g6 too early. I covered that in the protected pass pawn video, where you don't want the black king coming to h6 and the white king coming to f6, not in a stalemate on that particular one. But anyway, black can't do that. Black can't push the h pawn. So they go this way, I suppose, and then you outflank again. And black thinks, well, okay, I'm coming into g6, and there's lots of different moves according to the engine, but I think a lot of them will probably be just going around in circles to end up not getting threefold repetition and coming back to this position. I'm not sure of that, by the way, but it doesn't matter if there's other winning moves, because this is the one that Jesus de Levio gives in the book, which is just h5. And it's h5 check. I mean, if the black king goes backwards, we're going to sort of outflank more and come and pick up the h-pawn, obviously. So the only sort of drawing try is king g5, king f7. I mean, black may as well take the g-pawn. King g6, king f4, king takes h6, king f5, and king g7. And this pawn's going to promote. So did I cover everything there? Yeah, h6, g4, king g6, and then we want the opposition, so we play h3 and then h4. I think I covered everything. I covered black's main tries. I mean, they either play king e7, let you have the opposition straight away, so they're going to end up in that king g6, h5 check thing, or they try and take the opposition off you here, but then you've got the h5 reserve tempo. So basically, black can't really stop you with your plan of getting your king to h6. So let's just sort of see that king g6. I mean, even if you'd already moved one of your pawns, then you're still going to be able to, you've still got enough reserve tempi to get your king to h6. You've got to be careful though. Just as a general rule, if you've got your pawns on the starting squares, the pawn move you really don't want to make is g4. Okay, this pawn being on g4 is just bad for the attacker in so many ways. It gets in the way of your king getting to h6, and there's even an important drawing position where even if your king has got later on to h5, I think we'll see it in a bit, the g4 pawn blocks your king coming back, and black's got a drawing trick. So just as a general rule, don't put your pawn on g4 until much later. Move your h pawn, don't move your g pawn if they're both from their starting squares. That's a pretty good rule of thumb. So black's desperately trying to stop white getting to h6 here. King back to g7. You see, we've got to h6, and yeah, we should sort of look at what happens when the white king gets to h6. I mean, here it's trivial because we've got so many extra pawn moves. It's just ridiculous. But let's go back to the original position, because even if it's white to move in this position, it's still a win for white. It's just a complete. So let's just play some silly moves just to get back to the original position with white to move. Yeah, and of the 4 pawn moves you could make, consistent with what I just said, g4 is the only one that messes it up, basically. And the reason is that we need a spare tempo later on. We need to have one of our pawns in a 1 or 2 pawn move situation. So we're going to get the king to h6. It doesn't really matter in a way which pawn we've pushed, as long as we've left one of them on the starting squares. So h4 is fine as well. In fact, we'll play h4, which is kind of basically the worst move that's still okay, thinking about it, because you can still get your king to h6, and then you've kept in your pocket the 1 or 2 choice. That's all you need to do. The reason it doesn't work the other way around is once your pawn's on g4, you can't get your king to h6. That's all that is. So that's worth knowing as well, I guess, from the defending side's point of view. So let's just play the worst move possible, where we're just unnecessarily giving up a spare tempo. But it's still just completely won. Let's say we see king g6, king g4. What if black tries to be really obstinate? They really don't want you getting to h6. Then you can still just push the h pawn again. King g7, king g5, and you're getting to h6. I mean, the engine reckons that black should just play h6 themselves now, but once that pawn's there, you can see you're going to outflank the black king and win it. I mean, even if they get the opposition, you can just wrestle it back. I mean, I presume I was about to say even g4 is okay here. Okay, so you don't need to worry, you're going to outflank the black king. So let's just see what finally happens when black gets their king to when white gets their king to h6. Now, black's lost this, so it doesn't really matter where they put their king. Those 2 choices are the same, effectively. That's your other choice. I think this is the same. That's the same as f7's the same choice as f8. because after king h6 you'd have to play king g8 anyway. So yeah, let's put the king on f7. Why not? King h6, king g8. So it wouldn't have mattered if black's last move was king f8. So black could have had a choice, by the way, that in this position it could have been white to move and their king could have been on h8, depending if they'd gone back to g8 originally. That's the odd-even choice. But here it's irrelevant, because now white can choose odd or even with the g-pawn move. There is a rule, it's called Bird's rule. I'm guessing it's the same bird from Bird's opening, where if the pawns are on the same colour you do this, and if they're not you do that. I personally don't really want to learn a rule at this stage. You know, even if I was down to increments, surely we can calculate it. Okay, so imagine we're going to play g6 now. Takes, king h8, g7, king back to g8, stalemate, or lose the pawn. Okay, so if we put our pawn on a white square now, we've messed it up. It doesn't take long to work that out. So we've got to put our pawn on the dark square, d3. And all black can do is shuffle backwards and forwards, and it just plays itself out now. There you go. Done. Let's go back to this bit, not h6. Let's play instead of king f7. Like I said, that was one choice. You can see they're all the same choice, because after white plays king h6, then you have to play king g8. The other choice is this. Here, let's do the second choice. And we know it's going to be g4 in a minute, because it was g3 on that one. But let's think about it again. King h6, king h8. Right, if we play g6 now, then we're going to see takes, king g8, g7. That's a win. So we want to put our pawn in a white square now. g4. Done. King g8 and just play out the rest. By the way, if black doesn't take the pawn, you still win and get an extra pawn. You know, you could get 2 queens rather than 1 if you wanted to. So yeah, let's just do the more sensible way for black to lose, and you can see it's a loss. So in this original position, white's got all these spare tempi at the beginning. So if it's black to move, they're already going to win by getting their king to h6, and then just using those spare tempi. And even if it's white to move, then they can just play any pawn move except for g4, even h4. It was okay, but h3 would also just be winning. I mean, I'd probably play h3 just as, you know, not to mess it up. You can also play g3, by the way, and you can use your spare tempo later on with the h pawn. You keep your 1 and 2 choice for the h pawn, but importantly, with g3 now, you wouldn't block your king's route to h6. So that's pretty important. Is there anything else to say about that? Yeah, there's one other thing to say actually, which is that, yeah, black's lost this basically. So whether they try the h6 defense, that's an extremely important position to know. Whoever's got the opposition gets the desirable result. If black doesn't push the pawn, then you get your white gets their king to h6 and they've won. I mean, this is a silly move here, h5, but I'm now going to play an even sillier move for white just to sort of set up the starting position, because this is also in the book of Jesus. Imagine this position where instead of black's last move they've played king f5, on their last move they've played h5. If the black king is on this 4th rank, then you can draw by pushing the h pawn, and there's just nothing that white can do. I mean, let's go through the various choices. We could see g3, king e5, and alright, you had the opposition, but there was no way to use it because the h pawn's guarding g4. So you might see some shuffling back and forth, and there's just nothing to be done there. I mean, I suppose you could go h3, but now it's that important position where black's got the opposition. And if you went h4, I guess that's still just king f5, and you're not going to make any progress there as white. So let's look at, instead of g3, white tries h3. So this time, you know, when you go offside, the black king can't come in here. But now black plays h4, and you're not making any progress. And finally, if white tries h4, you're still not making any progress really. The opposition doesn't do anything for you because the h-pawn's guarding g4. So I think that's everything covered in the Book of Jesus regarding this g and h pawn versus h pawn. It's extremely well written. I strongly recommend that book. It's ending 87, and I mean, he finishes with some conclusions. I think I'm just going to grab the book actually and read those conclusions. Just bear with me a sec. Just going to pause my recording. So we've got the stronger side should keep his pawns on their original squares, especially one of them, and move the king forward. If the stronger side's king reaches h6 and one of his pawns is still on the second rank, the ending is 1. A g-pawn on g4 may be an obstacle to reach the h6 square because black can play h6 at some stage. Therefore, the stronger side should keep the g-pawn rather than the h-pawn on the second rank. I didn't show that, by the way, the black playing h6 at some stage, but it's coming up soon. If the stronger side has moved both pawns, the ending is drawn as long as the defending pawn stays on the second rank. So yeah, we need to see that actually. It all comes down to the choice that black has. In fact, yeah, we will show that in a sec. However, if the stronger side has both their pawns on their original squares, keeping the defending pawn on the second rank is useless. We've seen that already. In that situation, the best defensive procedure involves moving the king forward, and if you can hold the fourth rank, push the pawn to the fourth rank as well. So that was the last thing that I covered. So I still haven't actually, I mean, it's coming up later on in one of the Dvoretsky positions, but I still haven't covered the drawing procedure if white's already wasted one of their reserve tempi. So in fact, let's do that now, just in case it doesn't come up later on. Let's I don't want to play g4 in case it stops my king getting to h6 in the first place. Let's play. In fact, what I'm going to do is just get the king to h6 and then lose one of mine. So let's play h3. So sorry, it's black to move here, isn't it? So king g6. We'll play h3. King back to f6. I wonder if I can still do the right demonstration with g3. I think I can. I mean, as soon as I hit g3, the engine's going to say it's a draw. But let's see if we can still get the king to h6. I mean, we can, I suppose, because black doesn't care, but black might even have other things going on. But let's see it. King h6, king f5. Oh no, king g7 is the only drawing move still. So king g5. Now it's important. Okay, and without looking at it, I don't know what black's drawing move is. And you would have to work it out at the board. That's one choice. And I think that's the same choice. That's your other choice. Okay, you've got a green choice and a red choice. One of them draws, the other one loses. Once you've played your next move, white's going to play king h6. Okay. Now these two pawns both being here, you can see that it is an even number of moves for them to both be there. So you may as well just pretend they're there. Okay. So as black, we're going to move our king. White's going to play king h6. Then we're going to move our king again, and white's going to play pawn to g6. So where do we want our king to be? Do we want it to be on g8 or h8? Well, we're going to take, and then we want our king to be on, I'm just working it out, we want it to be on g8, don't we? Because after takes, we'll play to h8, and then white has to push the pawn with check, and we come back. Okay, so we want our king to be on g8 when white pushes the g pawn, which means our next move has to be the green. I hope that's right. I just glanced at the engine and got a horrible feeling there that I got it wrong, but no, I'm right. Okay, those are your free drawing moves, and king g8 loses. That's your losing move. Let's just play one in the mat. I mean, the safest thing to do really is surely. Is there anything unsafe about any of it? I suppose if you go to h8, white can triangulate and make you think about it again. So let's just go to f7. King h6, king g8. And now there's nothing white can do. It's just predetermined. So you just shuffle back and forth. It's predetermined how these pawns are going to arrive. If you calculated it properly, you don't really need to do any more thinking for the rest of the game. There you go. You've got the draw. I think that's about to appear anyway in one of the Dvoretsky positions, but that was everything covered in the Book of Jesus. Endgame 87. I thought it was extremely good. So I think Dvoretsky he does sort of cover that, but I don't know. I don't think he takes it quite to the same basic level, which I personally needed it at. Although I think he does cover it, but yeah, just not as in such at a basic level, basically. Anyway, this position's interesting because the white pawn has sort of sinned, or white has sinned and put their pawn on g4. It's black to move here, and this is still a win for white with black to move. And we've got, the engine's saying h6 here, but you can see that's white's just outflanking straight away. Black takes the opposition, but we could play h3 or h4. We're going to outflank when the h pawn is done. Okay, so that's not particularly interesting. And I've just covered what happens. Again, here's black's two choices. If they move back with the king, they can put it on g8, so that when your king comes to h6, we're going to play king h8, or they can put it on one of the other three squares, and when the king comes to h6, we're going to go to g8. And it really doesn't matter. Well, I just don't care what black does, because I'm going here, and then I'll think about what I need to do with my h pawn. You can even play your g pawn forward, can't you, and then think about it. You know that's okay. This is the move where one of them wins and one of them draws, and you just got to work it out. Okay, so if I put my pawn on a white square, so imagine if I played h5 next move, so I put my pawn in a white square, black's going to play that, g6, takes, back to h8. No, don't want to do that. I do not want to put my pawn on a white square. So it's got to be h4. And I'm right. h4 is the right move. So yeah, in this particular position, although white has sinned and put their pawn on g4, it's not quite the same as what Jesus de la Ville was saying, because that's all about the pawn stopping the king getting to h6 in the first place. Or maybe it's the same thing. But anyway, let's just play some silly moves now, just to get the same position with white to move, because then it's a draw. So let's go king f8, king f5. Yeah, this is already a draw. Okay, you think, well, what is it, a draw? I'll just come to h5. Remember that black can't push the h pawn, because then we just do outflanking and win it. And as soon as the king moves back, I'm going to play king h6, and I'll think about it. So, all right, show me this outflanking. Well, it's easy. I'll just jump over my own pawn, and oh yeah, kings don't jump. Okay, so that was one of the problems. This is now just a draw. White's got no way to get around and do the outflanking. They could come the long way, I suppose. King h4. Black still doesn't even need to be careful here. King g6. Let's go king g3. I'm just waiting for the point where black needs to be careful. Not particularly, because your kings come back. They can actually play h5 straight away. Oh yeah, that's the simplest way of looking at it, isn't it? That obviously black wants to meet h5 with g5 protected past pawn, but they can't get a protected part. They can't do that unless they're ready to back it up straight away with h4, because the pawn will just fall, and there's just no way to do it. So yeah, there's just no way to make progress there. Should we try h3? See what black's got against that. King f6. Can we still play h5? I think. Yeah, in fact, oh, there's loads of drawing moves with black there, but h5 can still be played. It's like you can't get it in, basically. So yeah, that was worth knowing about, that particular position. As the attacker, just don't put your pawn on g4. That's just a good rule to follow. Anyway, so Dvoretsky covers that. I don't think there's anything else to be said about that isn't already covered in the Book of Jesus and we haven't talked about. And then he gets onto this. This is a Reti Mandler study from 1921. So this is 104 years old. 104 years old, two people coming with this study, and I'm still not totally convinced I understand everything that's going on, but I think I do. It all comes down to, at some stage, black's going to play this g6 move, or black wants to play that g6 move, with the kings in opposition here. And whoever's got the opposition gets the desirable result. So for example, let's say we see king g4. King g4 throws away the game. At the moment, because the pawns aren't in that configuration and one spare move needs to be played, it's the anti-opposition that both sides are looking for. So black would first of all play king f7, because we can't take the anti-opposition because the h6 pawn is covering it. Let's just look at all the moves that white could do here. First of all, h5, king e6. We're clearly going to see some outflanking, and the h5 pawn's going to fall. And then that's a trivial win. What about king h5? Okay, so king h5, we would play king f6. I think white's only got one legal move there, which is king g4. Then we go king e5. If king back to h5, king f4, white's still only got one legal move, king g6. King g4 takes h5, and it's done. So we can't play king h5. If king f4, then remember it's the anti-opposition that we want, because we haven't played our g6 move yet. So king e6 would do it. King e4, and then we take the opposition. Okay. I mean, black could mess around here, coming back to f6, king e4. But the point is, you want the opposition on the e file here, so that as soon as white moves aside, you're outflanking. And yeah, I mean, I've covered this earlier on, but just one rank further up. So we had this position with white's pawns on g4 and h5. What else? King g4, king f7, king f5. Black can play g6 straight away, and now you want to take the opposition. So king e5, king e7, and then you've taken the opposition on the e file where it's important. You can come in. There's the opposition again, and that's transposed. So that was king f5 that white can't do. And finally, king f3. So we've got the long distance opposition as black, so we play g6 straight away. G6. And there you go, there's the long distance opposition. As soon as white moves aside, it was the opposition on the e file that's important for the outflanking. So black moves, black comes in basically, king back to e4, and we've transposed. So right at the start, if white's a bit careless, king g4 loses, because king f7 means that black's going to get the anti-opposition in this pawn configuration, or the opposition in the pawn configuration where they've already pushed g6. So the drawing move here is king g3. Let's see black try to do a similar sort of thing. I mean, black might think first of all, they might think king f7. I've got the anti-opposition. What's so good about this? Then you play king g4, and black thinks, again, you know, they might think, well, I've got the anti-opposition, king f6. Now there's an astonishing drawing maneuver here, which is really worth knowing about. White played king h5. King f5 is stalemate. We sort of saw similar to we saw this position a minute ago, but it was white to move, where white only had one legal move, and then black king came to f4, and then the white king only had one legal move. This time it's black to move. If they go king f5, white has no legal moves. So we'll see king e5, king g6, king f4 takes, h5. Similar to earlier, it's not looking good, but check this out: king f6, draw. So that I reckon that was black's best try after king g3. Play king f7 after king g4. Play king f6 to say, look, I've got the anti-opposition. If the opposition is taken, white can play h5 in that point and then take the opposition. You're not going to make any progress there. What else could black try? They could try king e6, but again, that's not really achieving anything, because you wanted the anti-opposition in that position. Black still got to play this g6 move, and as soon as they do, white would play king e4 and seize the opposition. I mean, there's just nothing black can do. King f6, king e4. We're going around in circles. All black can do is play g6 and give up the opposition. So that was king e6. That was the one other move I was going to cover. King g6, which is king g6, which is pretty similar. Did I do king g6? Oh, king g6 was h5, sorry. Oh no, the pawn push, g6. Okay, so now white wants the opposition, so you've got to play king f3. Yeah, and that's the Reti-Mandler study, which Dvoretsky spent ages going through. I think I've got it. I think it all comes down to this pawn configuration with the kings being opposite. Although you did have that extra. I think this line is just brilliant, to be honest. Not that one. King f6. This drawing trick here, I think it's really, really good. Yeah, I really like that. Let's hope I can pull it off in a game one day. Anyway, so he goes through that and then goes on to some games, puts them in the tragicomedy section. And I love the way he does this. It's just comical. He'll go through something that's incredibly hard. I'll spend ages not really understanding it. Go and look at a game, and then he'll be like, "Oh, watch the way that these two idiots played." And you're like, "Yeah, my God, idiots!" And you're just thinking, "Well, I'm pretty sure most of those moves I would have played." But anyway, this is a game from 1911. And I mean, you could have a go at this from black to play. What would you do? Pause the video and have a go at it. You might well get this, to be honest. If you pause the video and had a go, you might well get this. It's simpler than you think. I think Tarrasch was playing black in this game, and Bulls did up. But there's a forcing variation to check, basically. Because we know we can play king h3, and white has to meet it with king g1. Now, before you've even looked at it, at that stage, as far as I can tell, it's a coin toss as to whether that's a win or a draw. Because it just depends where white's king is when you play g3. So count it out. I mean, I'm not going to count it out again because I've done that like 3 or 4 times already on this video. But if you'd counted it out, it's a win. When White's moves to king h1, king g1. The pawn's progress is predetermined, and it's a win. So I'm kind of like with Dvoretsky on that, to be honest. Even though, you know, it's sort of criticising these top players, it's sort of, well, that is a bit of a balls up, isn't it? Because why didn't you just check the forcing variation and it wins? I mean, if it didn't win, if it came down to stalemating, then you've got to try something else. Fair enough, but I don't know. Did he just miscount? Was he in time trouble? Who knows? Did they have time trouble in 1911? I'm not sure. Anyway, in the game, he played King E4. We saw King F2, King D3. Lots of sort of messing about, and eventually we got into, they just agreed to draw there. So that was from 1911. And then last position, and this is the last video I'm going to make on pawn endgames from the Dvoretsky chapter. So this is it basically. This is the last chance to pause the video. I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to make any more videos on some of the other chapters. I'll have to see how I go studying them again, because it's the pawn endgame chapter I've studied the most, and well, let's make some videos, might be quite useful. White to play, pause the video and decide what you'll do here. So this is pretty similar to the Reti-Mandler study, and remember that this is the pawn configuration with, I guess, eventually the kings there. But yeah, that's the pawn configuration where whoever's got the opposition is going to get the desirable result. And White's already got the opposition. I've sort of got the diagonal opposition here. So your winning move, I mean, there's a couple of winning moves, but G4 wins. I mean, what does Black do here? If we see King E6, would meet that with King E2. If we saw King D5, would meet that with King F3, keep the diagonal opposition. If we saw King D7, would meet that with King F3, keep the diagonal opposition. If we saw King E5, King E3 is the opposition, or if we saw King E7, King E3 is the long distance opposition. So it's a win. I mean, I'll just play the engine's top moves. It says King E6 is the best move for Black, although it's checkmate in 33. Yeah, if Black plays King E6, it's checkmate in 33. Well, that's the last thing you want is checkmate in 32. Got to make it last till checkmate in 33. There you go, long distance opposition. Best move for Black apparently is King D6. Now the opposition, remember, is on the E file where it's important. We forced the king offside, rather than, I mean, this wouldn't throw the game away, but rather than have the opposition all day and have a party about it, let's come in King F3. And because Black can take the diagonal opposition, but then you're just going to come up the F file and I mean, we can see that king here, and eventually, you know, Black's got to do something sensible, and then we take the opposition here. What's Black going to do there? King F6, and then the outflanking begins. Is there anything else to be said about that? Not really. Oh, I suppose, yeah, we could go for the thing where White's got to play the H5 check move. Let's do that. So King F7. Is it King F7 I want to play? Nope, it wasn't King F7. I mean, that's a win, but it was the other one. I want to play King E7, don't I? There you go. This was the nice variation on an H5 check. This one, yeah, I quite like that way of winning it. Done. So yeah, G4. Well done if you found it. The game continued King F3, which throws away the win, because in this position, Black wants the anti-opposition. Got to be careful not to come into E5 too early though, because in fact, what happens on king e5. Although that's the anti-opposition, I think it's too far up the board. And, oh yes, your problem there is that when white plays g4, you think, aha, well, now I take the opposition. It's like, no, you don't. You just ballsed it up back again. But black didn't play that. Black played king e7. Brilliant move, because now g4 is met by king f7, taking the long-distance opposition. White played king f4. Black played king e6, g4, king f6, that's the correct move, king f3, and unbelievably, I mean, it looks at this point like black really has understood what's going on. You know, you need the opposition in this pawn configuration. And inexplicably, black played king e7, king e3. I don't think the tragicomedies is over yet. King f7, there's some outflanking, king f6, or maybe it was over. Yeah, I don't think there's any messing it up after this. I wonder if it finishes in... No, it does. It does finish in the exact same variation that I just said was my favourite. So that's G and H pawn versus H pawn. Really recommend the Book of Jesus. It's endgame 87 in that, and I think the stuff Dvoretsky does on top of that is fantastic. And if you haven't gathered by now, I think everything Dvoretsky does on pawn endgames is fantastic. Hope you've liked the videos where I've tried to make sense of it for everyone.